welcome to our 27th Investors AMA with Entangle Fi. They are a next generation cross-chain synthetics protocol who are planning to really change the way that we exchange and move liquidity across blockchains. We're very excited to have them here. We're joined by Slava and Faisal. Welcome to the TulipDAO, guys. Could you please give me a little background on yourselves and just maybe about the whole team, if you could, a brief overview.
Yeah, happy to do so. So yeah, I'm Faisal. I come from previously an investment banking background. Ran a couple of global fintech projects for leading investment banks in Europe. And around 4.5, 5 years ago, I caught the top of the bull run, put a lot of money into it, and then of course the market crashed. So rather than going on a, not doing anything about it, I just went on a very sort of deep educational journey. I went to Oxford University. I did the blockchain strategy program, where I met some really fascinating and wonderful individuals who are now founders or fund managers, etc. And then really went on a sort of exploration journey, essentially, where I sort of set up my own family and friends crypto fund. In which I was investing into yield farming projects, DeFi, infrastructure, oracles, but not only just investing, it was also participation. So I was able to participate physically, various test nets and yield farming. And that really gave me a flavor of what happens on the ground in crypto. And I think combined with the corporate delivery aspect, I just really thought that, looking at the space, being in the space, getting some very good investments and finding some very good projects, I sort of saw, what it takes for a successful project and what it, to lead a talented team into actually executing on the idea. Because there's a lot of great ideas in crypto, but it's the execution that counts. So here we are. We set up Entangle a year ago. And I'll talk a bit more about the team, but I'll let Slava introduce himself as my co-founder and CIO, Chief Innovation Officer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Slava. Pleasure to be here, as always, with Tulip. I come from a computer science background and a musician background. I'm actually also a professional pianist on the side. I've been in the cryptosphere since, 6, 7 years, but mostly in the research phase. I read, I think, probably all the white papers out there, and I was very, very fascinated by Chainlink's white paper. By the way, there's a version 2 white paper out there. I can really recommend go and read it because it's so fascinating what they do with oracles and JSON parser data. For me, it was also always fascinating how if music is a bunch of algorithms, and the perfect algorithms create the perfect harmony. For me, it was always interesting with DeFi because it seems also to be a lot of algorithms strung together, but yet there's still the perfect harmony to be found as cross-chain interoperability still not made accessible. So my mission is to translate the perfect harmony, the perfect algorithm from music into DeFi, and here I am with Faisal getting entangled.
Yeah, so
It was poetry, man. That was poetry. Go on.
Yeah, so myself and Slava, obviously, we're very close friends, partners, and obviously we're leading the project. But also we've got a fabulous, dynamic young team. Tulip has the pleasure of working very closely with us. So about a year and a half ago, through my sort of advisory, I went on an advisory journey. I advised projects. I then was working with some developers who I saw the brilliant talent that they had. They just don't have the famous sort of names, etc. And then I sort of sat down with Slava, with the developer team. They've all got computer science degrees from St. Petersburg University. They've won a few competitions. Really young, talented. They understand. They're equipped both on EVM side and non-EVM, which is very key. I think everything is siloed at the moment in terms of a lot of the chains. They don't speak to each other, or there's certain mechanisms they use which are not the most secure to transfer value to one to another. And then part of the advisory team are a couple of my colleagues that are quants and mathematicians that devise algorithmic models for equity derivatives trading, etc. So combine that expertise, we realized that in order to maximize liquidity on a 1.2 trillion market, it's not the biggest market in the there's much bigger markets out there. It's relatively a small market. So in order to maximize this liquidity, you need to use tooling such as synthetics, which allow users to explore and have capital efficiency, but also maximize any liquidity that they're putting inside the system for rewards, etc. So encompassing all that together with Slava's, some of his innovation that he's brought, and our, dynamic, young, very talented development team, here we are with Entangle. So we'd love to speak about it today in a lot more detail and opening up to a realm of questions from you guys and girls.
Excellent. Yeah. You you did a very well or a very good job of introducing kind of the concepts that the protocol's introducing, like all of the cross-chain liquidity issues and advanced DeFi concepts. But if you could, on a basic level, just kind of for the more in more layman's terms, if you could just kind of review what is Entangle going to do, what problem is it going to solve, and how is it going to solve it, and what does that look like for the user, if you could? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so Entangle basically aims to do a few things. And number one is to make the user journey a lot easier. So you don't need to use various RPCs or various different networks on your wallet with AVAX, Phantom, etc. So if you have a yield farm on Phantom, for example, on Spooky Swap, you're an AVAX user. Are you able to position liquidity to that farm or participate in that farm providing liquidity? Because I think I'll just take one step back. Liquidity is actually the lifeblood of DeFi. So, without liquidity, if I can't provide liquidity, or if we can't provide liquidity to DEXs or to lending and borrowing protocols, they can't then allow people to exchange or allow people to borrow and lend. And that's where really money is generated. A lot of people have the false notion of DeFi because of all the tokens that have come in, high inflation, high APRs, and then they vanish. But really, it's the buying and selling activities, the spreads that are being charged, to the users where revenue is generated. So what we're doing essentially is allowing any user from their native wallet to participate in any yield farm or any liquidity exercise in order to get rewards from that liquidity. So if I just give a very basic example, if you're an AVAX user, you see a yield farm on Spooky Swap or Spirit Swap on Phantom, it's giving you just say 9% APR. You basically can provide that liquidity vis-a-vis or via your AVAX wallet. You get a synthetic LP, which represents the LP on Phantom, and you will accrue value and you will receive value in the same vein as you would if you were on that Phantom farm directly. Your synthetic LP token will accrue value in line. And when you want to exit, there's exit liquidity. You sell your synthetic LP and you come back into stable coins. But that's
Now,
part one of
if you
of
could,
the protocol.
real quick, now that's amazing, but was that going to be, as a user, am I able to stake into any Spooky Swap farm, or is this kind of like the farms that you provide that are available for those users?
So for the first phase, we're only going to provide stablecoin farms. I'm not just saying any stablecoin farms, but secure stablecoins like DAI, USDC, Magic Internet Money. And after that, we are going to provide some low-risk farms such as BTC versus Ethereum, Ethereum versus Phantom. But ultimately, this is where the DAO comes in, the Entangle token holders. They vote in the farm which is going to be launched as a synthetic LP on every chain.
So, Tulip, just to explain a little bit more. So, at the beginning, we are really doing this as an iterative process where we're testing this entire system. And what we're doing first is, and there's a reason why we're doing it this way, and I'll come on to that as well, is we're establishing firm foundations by first doing stablecoin farms, which are proven stablecoins and battle tested, not like the ones that we've seen come and go recently. And then what we're doing is there's an entire sort of borrowing aspect to Entangle as well, which is your synthetic LP that you receive, which is a representative of the liquidity that you provided, you can lock that up as your collateral, and then you can borrow Entangle USD against it. So because there's a layered ecosystem to this entire piece, we're going slowly but surely. Later on, there's going to be a democratic process in how we are going to allow certain farms or certain yield farms to come through. Initially, even the screening will be done by the team, the safety, the code review, etc. And then it will go through a DAO process where it will be selected by the DAO members. And that way it's democratic, but at least it's screened by professionals prior to entering the democracy process.
Okay. I can understand all that, and the need to start with stable coins first. You want a strong foundation before really rolling everything else out. But the real question I was asking is, where is that liquidity going? You mentioned the Spooky Swap farm. Now, is that a front end being hosted on the Entangle site that is then staking liquidity into a Spooky Swap LP? And then you're only presenting that functionality for select LPs that are hosted at Spooky Swap? Like, what does that piece look like? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So if I understand your question right, you're asking what LPs are we showing on which chain for users?
Well, you mentioned that, or Faisal mentioned that you'd be able to stake liquidity into Spooky Swap, right? So if that was the case, is that because obviously the user is only presented with what you display them on the Entangle site. Am I correct with that?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So they are only able to then stake into the Spooky Swap farm or Spooky Swap LPs that you provide functionality for. Is that where we're going, or is that LP farm hosted on the Entangle site on Phantom?
So the LP side on Spooky Swap is hosted inside a smart contract, which stakes the LPs and also compounds them, which then is translated via Oracle to the other chains with a single
Okay.
piece to accruing value.
Okay, so it's like a vault. So it's like a vault contract that is essentially auto-compounding the farm position at Spooky.
Yes.
But as always, we believe education is very important for the crypto community because there's been too many scams, too many hacks. And this is why we are very careful with the farms that we choose to provide for the users as synthetic LPs, because we cannot simply risk any users lose their money. That would be terrible, terrible.
And also, Tulip, I think the whole premise of why we're building our own chain to host this entire ecosystem that's being built on top is purely because of the validator solution and ensuring that all transactions are validated. So the whole foundational piece is that everything is backed. So if you hold $100 of a synth LP on a particular farm through the front end of Entangle, that is backed by $100 of the corresponding LP on the chain that you've provided liquidity to, in essence.
Right.
Therefore, when we build a stablecoin solution on top of this, it's actually a backed stablecoin. It's not an algorithmic stablecoin. So I give you another example for the benefit of the community members. So if I purchase a $100 USDC USDT synthetic LP that's based on Phantom, but I get it on my AVAX wallet as a synthetic LP, if I lock that as collateral, Entangle will allow me to borrow up to 80%, whatever the dynamic ratio is, against my collateral. So essentially, I've now got a yield-bearing collateral, but I've also got Entangle USD against it. So in essence, it's created earning opportunity for me, but also allowed me to expand my arms via capital efficiency because I now have a stable coin that I can go and speculate with or do whatever with.
Yeah.
Along with the safety. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say we've yet to see proper lending and borrowing collateralized by LP positions. We have seen it in some lower level DeFi protocols, but nothing that allows borrowing of a stable coin that is going to have widespread adoption. And I think the biggest the biggest thing there is going to make sure that adoption adoption happens and people start integrating Entangle USD. So um, obviously we know that that's a challenge, but I'm presenting that to the public that is going to be the large thing that we need to make sure happens when it comes time to rolling this stuff out. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And also, just to give you an idea of the safety level, so even with Entangle USD, we've built our own volatility indicator as well. Even on stablecoin based synthetic LP borrowing, there's always some fluctuations, even with battle tested stablecoins. So that's been accounted for. And also, Entangle USD will be a universal cross chain stablecoin. So for that reason, even the architecture, it's got liquidation engines built on each chain. So it's not like a single point of failure. If there is a problem on one particular chain, it will be confined to that chain because the liquidation engines operate as police officers of each individual point of connection to each blockchain. So you can kind of see that although there's this amazing synthetic layer of liquidity and exciting use cases, which we've got another 2 or 3 use cases which we haven't even revealed just yet, which we're still working on, and we're still doing the mathematics and the everything else around. You can see that underneath all of this, there's been real thought about how the translation of collateral is, one to one. How liquidation has been thought about, how volatility has been thought about. So it's really been thought out from a very foundational level in terms of safety and security. The last thing we want is, we're a docs team. We don't, our reputations are there. We're fully committed behind the project, and we want to give something to the DeFi community, which actually, is long lasting and is very safe at the root. So yeah, that's what I had to say around that. Slava, do you want to add anything, or is that okay? Yeah.
I think all those things are very clear. And one thing I want to outline, just to I want to simplify the overview of the project for people really quickly, just so everybody understands. Entangle is building a layer 1, an entire layer 1 blockchain, which is going to be hosting the liquidity in a network of dexes. That liquidity will be shifted around accordingly based on the size of the synthetic LP positions on various chains. It will utilize the messaging layer to send messages back to the layer 1 and in order to shift that liquidity around based on the liquidity positions on each chain. Is that accurate, Slava?
Absolutely, yes, it is.
Okay.
More or less. It's a little bit more complex, but
yeah. That's the overview. I just wanted to kind of let everybody know because I think we kind of didn't hit that part, but everything else, let's dig into the rest of the cross-chain stuff now. So what chains are we to be expecting at launch, you guys?
So okay, so that's a good question, and what I'll do is I'll just talk you through our build process and how we're executing this. We essentially have 4 components that we're going to glue together in the end. So we have the synthetic LP Vault application, which is primarily what we just discussed for a long time. We then have the Entangle USD, the cross-chain stablecoin, and then we have something which we're going to introduce later on in Q1 next year is single-sided asset liquidity provisioning. So Tulip has Ethereum, I have Phantom. There's a pair available, yield farm available. We get paired and we share split yield, and we manage impermanent loss in a very creative way, which we'll talk about as well. And the 4th pillar is the actual Entangle blockchain, Cosmos SDK, consensus, Tendermint consensus, and it's our own base layer with a custom Oracle solution. So what we're doing at the moment is we've developed the synthetic LP MVP, but it's hosted on a centralized Oracle. So currently the chains that we've connected are AVAX, Ethereum, Phantom, Binance Smart Chain, and we've just recently actually partnered with Elrond, and we've just incorporated their chain on our very private MVP, which is server-side Oracle hosted. In parallel, we are building the Entangle blockchain, and in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to have a transition exercise where we transition this synthetic LP application over to the Entangle blockchain. During this transition process, we're going to be adding layer 2s, Arbitrum, Optimism, and a few other L1s, which we're still deciding yet because we're going through conversations with relevant L1s, and whoever is going to offer us support and understand the power of what we're building, we will prioritize them in the build. In terms of Entangle USD, that pillar is also being worked on in parallel with the rest of this. And then single-sided asset staking, the requirements, the architecture, and all that has been done. And we're going to start that build process very soon. So if you look at these 4 pieces, they're all being cooked at the same time, but they will be wrapped together in a nice wrapper with a bow, colored bow, hopefully, towards the end of the year. So I hope, Tulip, that not only answers your question in terms of chains that are connected already, the 4 or 5 that I've mentioned. We'll be looking to add NEAR and a couple of other non-EVM chains, but I hope it's answered your question a bit more comprehensively.
Yeah, no, of course. That's great. That's exactly, I think, what people want to hear, especially with the landscape right now being so dynamic. There's so much changing. There's a lot of L1 that are being mismanaged, and I know that people like to see flexibility, and they like to see people who go after the chains who attract the right builders, and NEAR is definitely one of those. I would agree. That's awesome. I'm excited to introduce you guys to the NEAR Foundation and start those talks real soon. So
just very quickly on NEAR. So we've also spoken with our developers have looked into NEAR. We're very well acquainted with Aurora, the Rainbow Bridge, the NEAR tech stack. We're very confident Tulip, once post that introduction, we'll be able to integrate with NEAR. And just on that note as well, so with Elrond recently, we've had some very positive discussions. We're in discussion with some of the infrastructure providers who may even host some nodes for us. So some very, very positive things with the real builders of the space. I think teams like Elrond are very underrated. They're a fantastic outfit. They're doing some brilliant things. They've got a great team, and they're really being very helpful, and they're seeing the vision of Entangle. So I just thought I'd give a shout out to our friends at Elrond as well.
Excellent. Yeah, Elrond has been, quietly building, not overly. They've been focused on the right things, and they've been making sure that the tech is solid, making sure that they have something that's worth building. And I think that's pretty rare in the space. A lot of times you see people falling victim to chasing a gimmicky marketing scheme and trying to catch a trend. And then they lose sight of what's important here in the blockchain, and they end up in a position like Solana was with shitty builders building wallets that are putting everybody at risk.
Absolutely.
So
and
yeah,
also,
I think it's great.
Also, very quickly, I mean, at the end of the day, we can build a liquidity solution, but unless we've got an institutional mindset, that's the key to scaling something and making it very, very attractive for large-scale operations. So, some of our early-stage partners are liquidity providers for various CFD platforms, etc. So, I think truly for crypto to scale and become very successful, there needs to be a marriage between traditional finance projects and then the power of peer-to-peer technology, and is what blockchain, the offering that blockchain gives. So what we're doing is we're constantly exploring that world, where we see liquidity as the premium revenue opportunity, and then what use cases that we can define with that, even from a traditional finance perspective. So, we're having some very interesting conversations with some parties around potentially, even things like what Mirror Protocol offered, where you have traditional stocks and bonds, etc., being offered on the blockchain, because we have that infrastructure. We're building for that type of opportunity. So I just thought I'd give that as a future indication to the friends that have joined the call today.
Yeah, where it can go in the future. Yeah. Also something like Keeper. Are you familiar with Keeper?
Yeah.
Yeah, are you kind of considering that direction as an end game involving forex and that type of stuff? That's a potential direction as well at the end game.
Absolutely. And also, like it's all about gamifying. Why would people use Forex or options, etc., on the blockchain? We want to gamify some of this where we're looking at some really cool use cases. They're very outrageous at the moment, but I'm trying to shave them down into deliverable items where people can speculate in short forms on movements of price of various assets. And we're trying to secure one of our early investors is the ex-founder of Saxo Bank, Lars Sire Christensen. So we're having some interesting conversations with them on possible use cases and how we can plug genuine liquidity, even as an additional backing for Entangle USD, despite our infrastructure making sure it's one-to-one backed. We're looking at options on further solidifying the infrastructure. So we basically have a playground of various things for people to do, to speculate, to do yield farming, all in a secure way, where the platform earns revenue and the value is accrued to the token itself, which is of course something that we will discuss in due course.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's mad. Okay. Well, amazing. Additionally, if we could, let's rewind just a little bit. Can we review the layer one, the Entangle token, what it's going to cost to run a validator, and if you could, are we able to speak about the potential Solana venture, the collection, reducing fees on the validators, or is that not?
I mean, we can mention it briefly, but I think if we just give an overview that, look, we're looking to invite multiple parties to be validators, people and colleagues and institutions and general infrastructure providers across the space. We're trying to get also yield bearing protocols. We've recently had a discussion with Umami Protocol, who demonstrated interest in running a node. So we're looking for as many validators as possible. I think we're still pricing that up in terms of what it would cost. We're looking around the region of $30,000 to $35,000 potentially. How that translates to token value, that's all being calculated yet. So it's something that we're looking to open up. We're just finishing documentation around that Tulip. But if there is interest from those members of the community who have ran nodes before, who understand nodes, we're more than happy to have further discussions around that with them.
Okay, so kind of private allocation of the nodes in the beginning to trusted parties, and then once mainnet is launched, can we discuss how many tokens, what the USD value is expected to be?
That's a good question. So for the mainnet, once we officially launch the Entangle token, that is obviously going to be a little bit more expensive than if you buy the tokens in the private round to be a validator. However, that is also why we have chosen to gamify it, but that's a little secret for now. It's something we want to surprise the community with. But I can give you a little sneak peek. Uh, we're gonna run a very, very scarce small NFT collection sooner or later, where some of the NFTs will give a percentage reduction in tokens needed to run a validator to show thanks to the community that was with us from the early stages. You guys that have been here with you for our first AMA.
Excellent. That's amazing. Okay,
So
go ahead.
Go ahead, Tulip. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we really want to build, and Tulip, you know how vocal I am about educating the community. I when you have an informed base, of a community, I think whatever we're going to plant on top will have at least some infusion of education of what we're doing. If crypto is to succeed, and I don't want to sound cheesy or like a motivational speaker right now, but I think it's very, very, it's imperative that everybody understands even simple things like why we provide liquidity, what happens when we provide that liquidity. So we're looking to, in parallel, to create a volume of educational material, which will at least give that knowledge to our investor base, to our early followers, early node holders, and I truly believe that what we're building, the passion is at a very, I'd say, almost at an extreme level, and those that are with us in at the very beginning will definitely will reap the rewards of being part of the Entangle team in essence.
Yeah, I think the passion is clear, and anybody who's heard me talk about the protocol, or anybody who knows me, they know how passionate I am about the space, and it's very exciting to be part of this team. Just to be clear with everybody here, there's very, very high caliber of work being done. Execution is amazing, and I'm very excited to be part of the team. Very excited to be involved. With that, I'm going to start going into community questions here. And Cam was asking the extent of our partnership and the background on the rest of the team. The extent of the partnership, it began as DAO outreach and advising, and what I was meant to be doing was helping with outreach on an organic level, talking to, just like what I'm doing here, talking to our people, spreading word to DeFi users about what's coming, and reaching out to through my organic partnerships that we've built at the TulipDAO to help inform people of what's coming, try to introduce them to people like Spirit Swap, Spooky Swap, who can incorporate Entangle USD, etc. I kind of ended up, I guess, asserting myself and assisting with a bit more because I'm very interested in the project, and like I said, I'm very passionate about the space. When I see something that I believe can change things, I want to be involved, and I'd do it for free basically. But here we are, and yeah, very excited to be here. The background of the rest of the team, Slava or Faisal, do you want to touch on maybe the dev team a little bit and
Yeah. So the dev team, so we have our own in-house development team. So I sort of have my own studio. I have a partner, myself, Slava, and Yaroslav, who's our program director as well. We're kind of, we have our own in-house developers, particularly for this project. The guys are from St. Petersburg University. We have a tie-up with a couple of universities based out in Russia. Obviously, due to the war and all of that stuff, we've moved our guys out. So they're in Bali or in Dubai or in Turkey. So there's no issues there in that respect. We got them out very early. So they've been working on, for the last 5 years in blockchain. They've been doing early sort of ICOs, DEXs, etc. Some of them have won a few competitions within the blockchain sphere. But the beauty is that the last year and a bit, we've gone through a massive educational process. So we're actually partners with a team called Fluidity Money. Shamir they're backed by Multicoin, and they have some wonderful development talent on their side, Rust developers and real leading edge developers. So what we do is we basically have a lot of sessions with some of our partners in multiple language exchange, in upskilling. And we're at a stage now where we had a conversation with L1's lead developer today who was very complimentary and very positive in even the integration work, which took us 2 weeks to achieve. And normally, that kind of work would take a team probably 6 to 8 weeks. So I think it's the execution ability, the on the ground experience is second to none. We also have Slava. He's got his computer science background. There's that piano creative aspect to the team. And then we've just signed up a partnership with Cambridge Blockchain University with their president, who's also advising us. And they've got some wonderful young talent who know blockchain from the Cambridge University side of stuff. And there's always idea exchanges, checking over. We've had AVAX inside our GitHub. They were very happy with the work that we did. So our work is battle tested and proven now. Our MVP is actually working. We're just not releasing it yet publicly because it's not been audited, but we are allowing certain private users who know to come in, test with $5, $10. I wouldn't recommend more than that. And if anybody in this call is interested in testing the MVP, do message Tulips privately. Just send your wallet address. We'll get it whitelisted. But again, I wouldn't recommend testing with more than $10 at this stage, and I wouldn't really open it up to anyone wider than those on this call until we are audited, and then you'll feel free to put in whatever you need to put in to test it.
Right. Yeah. It's not the most exciting thing to test right now. It's just showing the basic functionality of what's going to be available. If you are interested, preferably don't DM me, but open a ticket here in the TulipDAO and we'll get you taken care of. Or open a ticket at Entangle in their Discord.
Sorry, Tulip, I didn't mean to get your inbox flooded, but yeah. But
No
no, but I do agree, it's not very exciting to test at the moment. All you'll see is our front end capability, our blockchain, internal DEX network. There's a few live stablecoin farms that are, you can buy your synthetic LP, and you're not testing with more than $5, $10. If it's 7%, 8% APR, you'll probably see the results of that in 6 months' time. So, but you're able to see the mechanics of the system. So that's why it's not being launched even publicly, because you know what the crypto community is like sometimes, where if it's not wow on day one, it's like the hype dies down. So we're waiting until we add a few more mixed asset LPs, until the stablecoin aspect is ready, and then people can do a little bit more exciting things with the protocol. And at that stage, we'll be opening it up to more testing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So Ace1477 was one of our first question askers. He was asking, what is the revenue model of Entangle and what kind of services can we enjoy from Entangle protocol? So, I mean, let's just simplify that. And what is generating revenue for the protocol and sustainability, essentially?
I'm going to let Slava talk to this one.
So we have three real sources of revenue, or four actually. Sorry. The first thing is on internal DEXs, whenever users exchange USDC for SynthLPs or vice versa, there's a DEX trading fee of 0.25%, which is a variable, which we're still figuring out should it go lower or higher. And then on the LPs, which are backing the SynthLPs, there's an auto compounder going on, and there's a percentage fee there that goes also towards the Entangle revenue model. And from the SALP, single asset liquidity provision, there's also a percentage from the auto compounder that goes back into the revenue pool of Entangle. And then there's also a big revenue point of Entangle USD. There's API of, I think, 2% to borrow Entangle USD. And then there's liquidation fees as well. If that happens, if users go in with SynthLPs of mixed LP assets, and decide to gamble with leverage, there's also liquidation there in case something happens. And on all that revenue, it goes into the Entangle revenue distribution model, in which 26% goes to the DAO treasury, 7% goes to the developers, and 7% goes to marketing, and the rest it goes towards buyback and burn Entangle tokens. This Entangle is meant towards sustainability. We are not a shitcoin high yield APR farm. Everything we emit in terms of Entangle tokens is always at least 100% backed by real revenue.
Amazing. That's something that you do not hear. All emissions are backed by real revenue.
Also, Tulip, if I could just add to the wonderful, statements by Slava there. In terms of Web3 businesses, I think one of the mistakes that's been made for many years is many projects have launched with the view to capturing retail money without a thorough projection and understanding of revenue. And that's where you need the traditional finance minds. I know we don't like TradFi in crypto, but TradFi has been doing revenue for multiple years and way ahead of the curve. So when we designed the revenue model for Entangle, it's actually been designed in order for, if we hit certain milestones of TVL, it's actually a profitable Web3 business and not just we launch the token, high APR, then dump on everybody, and then let's play the hot potato game, and who ends up with it at the end is the loser. So it's really been designed intrinsically from ground up, not only with the safety and all the other things that I described, but it's got revenue at the DNA. So all of these pieces across the dApps that we're building on top of the chain, each dApp has its revenue stream, how that then corresponds to what part of the revenue, where that goes into a treasury, how the platform then can become self-sustaining. So all of that has been very, very well thought through. So I just wanted to make that point. In terms of Web3, I think revenue is not concentrated on enough or not thought about enough.
Yeah.
So that's where we've sort of differentiated ourselves in our mindset. It's been very, very planned in a lot of detail around revenue, especially.
Yeah, it's clear to see. It's clear to see. I mean, we've been in this space for many years, and still we have a lot of developers who are attracted to the space. And what happens is there's so many developers because the tech attracts them, and then they want to build. And the only way to really build and test stuff is in production. Is like Andre said, test and prod. So it's we've been in this unsustainable loop, right? And it's nice to see some things changing and actual revenue-backed emissions. That's something that is rare, very rare. The next question from Ace was, can you earn passive income from Entangle? And the answer is yes. By staking your Entangle tokens in a validator, or you can delegate your tokens to a validator and stake them to earn passive yield. You can also, when you are adding your LP positions for synthetics, when you are able to earn yield on that as well. So
you're also able to earn yield, sorry, Tulip, as a liquidity provider. So you can provide your stables as liquidity, and you're earning rewards for that as well. So
right.
There are multiple ways to earn revenue interacting with the Entangle ecosystem.
Yeah. The third question from him was talking about sustainability, and we covered that. And we also talked about what problems are we solving. Okay, community questions. We just covered unsustainable yields. Who's advising or managing the treasury, and what's the plan for asset diversification if you have that figured out? If not, we don't have to answer that right now.
Treasury, you mean post revenue?
Treasury management of revenue that's generated by Entangle. Is there going to be an investment fund that also generates revenue for a treasury, etc.?
I'm just trying to understand if I got the question right. Do you mean the DAO Treasury, who manages DAO Treasury, which is acquiring 26% of Entangle's revenue?
I would imagine that's what the question is, yeah.
Okay, so that is the DAO Treasury. That is for the DAO to decide, essentially, what is they going to do with the DAO Treasury.
So you'll leave it to like the DAO to vote somebody to manage the treasury or something like that?
Yeah, so we're still figuring that out. Obviously, looking at DAO structure, how that DAO structure translates itself is still being defined, because the DAO is the very last piece of the Entangle puzzle. So there's still some work being done around that.
That's fair. I assumed so. It's a pretty early for that question. But just so everybody knows, Entangle's going to have its own block explorer. It's being designed right now. I was putting feedback on the notes last week. It looks amazing. It's going to have a treasury, or it's going to have a revenue breakdown, so you can see exactly where the funds are going, how much was earned. You'll be able to see all the transactions and the liquidity flow on the layer 1 in accordance to the shifts happening in the LP positions on various chains. So that's going to be happening, and that wasn't covered. So what are the utilities of Entangle USD, and how do we maintain its peg? What are plans if it gets depegged?
So let's talk about the utilities of Entangle USD first. So obviously, first it has a transactional utility, and then also we thought about we don't just want to give a stable coin. We actually want to give additional utility for it. That's why it also serves as a DAO token, but proportionally less DAO voting power than the Entangle token, of course. So for the how we're securing its pack, that's a really, really good informed question. So we have multiple parameters which is securing its pack. For example, we are limiting the amount of Entangle USD that can be minted at any time against collateral based on, for example, how much is in the DAO treasury, which is also used as collateral for the Entangle USD, or a separate collateral just in case that there is a black swan event. And then we are also using additional liquidity, which Entangle has of against possible DPEG if there's a black swan event that Bitcoin suddenly, whatever reason, pay. And but then if we go further than that, we're always over collateralizing Entangle USD. For example, if you have a single P position of USDC, which is worth $1, then you can only get 0.90 Entangle USD. So it's always over collateralized by at least 10%.
With
And for the
stables, right, Slava? With stables?
Yes, for stable SYNT LPs, it's always over collateralized by 10% if you're minting Entangle USD. So the thing is here, if USDC goes to shit, then I'm sorry, the whole crypto market goes to shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's something everybody needs to understand. No, we're all at the, at the mercy of USDC staying at peg. So
Powers that be.
what's that?
We're at the mercy of the powers that be.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And for the time being, they're allowing things to maintain. So I think that we are going to continue to see this conversation develop. There's already people working around the issues. There's going to be people, playing within the regulations and making sure that there is a sustainable stablecoin per regulations. But yeah, the landscape could be changing. We'll see. It's very obviously this stuff is very dynamic, day by day, right?
In saying that, I think Dai and Mim did very, very well through the thunderstorms and turbulence that was there in the last couple of months. So
They did.
there has been certain things that have emerged, and if those are asset backed, they've done very well. So we have taken a lot of conceptual ideas of how those performed and what the mechanisms are there, and have applied some of those lessons to how we're orchestrating and articulating the ENUSD.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Okay. We covered Entangle, how it's sustainable. We covered validators. We covered the peg. Okay, Jay Ryan has a great question. This has popped up twice, but I'm not positive. My knowledge is years old, and it's been a long time since I've read. But I believe a transaction sent through the messaging layer is sufficient to help, to tell Entangle what to do with the liquidity. But Jay Ryan is asking, what are we doing to make sure that we can verify the chain of custody linking a synthetic LP to the non-synthetic LP on a non-EVM chain? So we're talking like Rust to an EVM chain, Solana to Phantom, for example. How do we verify that chain of custody? Is it just done through a centralized message sent through Entangle blockchain, or is there some actual way that data is going to be transferred from Rust directly through the Entangle blockchain?
So that is exactly why we have specifically built Entangle blockchain with its capabilities to connect to light nodes of chains or through the IBC Cosmos module, which does transfer directly from chain to chain. But the question is about security. Whatever an oracle says, people can tamper with it. Black Swan event, if there's a malicious person, hacker, it's very possible to cheat or to do something. Also because there are different block times and how they can sync, etc. And that is exactly why we have our own custom oracle, which we have developed in-house. And now the backbone of that is also Chainlink in case it goes wrong. But anytime there's any kind of transaction which requires cross-chain validation, such as, for example, rebalancing or cross-chain transfers or liquidation, things as such, or for the chain of custody, then there's always the validators. And this is what the whole thing is based on, that we have actual validators. We don't just have 1, 2, or 3 validators like Polygon or, I don't know, what was it called, Nomad, or the other bridge, Ronin bridge that got hacked. We are actually developing and making sure that we have enough validators to make sure that there's always a sustainable and secure way to validate messages, that there's never any hack to happen.
Okay, great. We have another kind of devil's advocate here question about security. What would happen if, let's say, you have a synthetic LP position? This is from Pumpkin. Let's say you have a synthetic LP on Phantom, and the real LP that is being hosted on, say, Avalanche was hacked. Like the DEX was hacked or something, and the LP was drained. So the real liquidity is gone, but you still hold the synthetic LP. How do you fix something like that?
Okay, that is of course a very, very unfortunate scenario if that happens. That is why we have very secure measures we're taking against that ever happening. First, before we take any LP on any DEX and make them into synth LPs, we dox the DEX dev team, and then we run a separate audit on the DEX by our developers, which check, is there any loopholes, is there a mystery chief baker contract which has some kind of funny stuff going on, like for example Liquid Driver that had a funny master chef contract before it was finally fixed a month ago or 2 months ago. We have developers checking that all the time. But in case if all those steps happen to fail for whatever reason, this is still crypto and this is still blockchain, then of course we also have the DAO treasury to take care of that, and then we also have some kind of additional functions.
Okay, so I think the important thing there is that you guys are willing to do what it takes to, repair what was lost in that scenario. It would be a very rare situation, obviously, and hopefully wouldn't be too much liquidity, but yeah.
We would repair, and we are looking at various insurance options, etc. There are a couple of protocols that we're in touch with.
Yeah.
However, if you like, I think the question kind of, if we look at it from a completely different perspective, because the synthetic LP system is only doing what you would be doing if you install the AVAX network on your MetaMask and then you provided liquidity directly and then it got rugged. You're getting rugged, right? So it's not designing a system that it's just allowing that to happen on any chain or any wallet, etc. So I think in that unfortunate circumstance, we are looking at we're installing as many safety mechanisms prior to onboarding any yield farm, and we do have a treasury and we would love to compensate, but we can't be we're not a centralized entity where we offer a deposit guarantee, right? So
Right.
if that happens, then as you know, it's a risk that are there in crypto, and we hope that never happens, because we would like to think that all of the yield farms that we on board are going to be very, very secure.
Right.
And
yeah. I feel like you guys are going to be taking it step by step and utilizing the safest farms, especially in the very beginning, right?
yeah, because the problem is, Tulip, in the TradFi space, if we got 8 or 9% a year, that would be returns out of this stratosphere. But in crypto, 8 or 9% is I think beyond boring. So
Yeah.
people are seeking that thrill of high yield farming, and that's where those farms are unsustainable, and they have they don't have the most secure code. So we're not going to be aiming for super high 500% APR farms because, even if one gets rugged or there's a problem with one, it damages the reputation of the protocol. So, we will be doing mixed asset farming where yields are still exotic, but definitely we will be using all safety measures prior to onboarding any particular yield farm.
Of course, of course. And I would imagine that you guys over time will introduce maybe some more medium or higher risk farms and make sure people are educated before they use them, etc.
Yeah, like a private portal where we have a page for the degens.
Awesome. Well, also you're going to be having other people and other protocols wanting to utilize Entangle and maybe start to leverage your technology for their DeFi protocols, which would provide those APRs for people and allow them to use Entangle to do so. But it removes that liability from you.
Good point, because with Entangle, it's not limited to just LP farms. And the synthetic infrastructure provides the window to any yield-bearing type of protocol. So recently, we've been discussing with Umami. Feel free to check them out. They have a very, very interesting USDC Vault strategy, which is very secure, very, very well tested. So we're in the process of discussion around potentially offering the Umami Vault as a synthetically through Entangle. So it does open that realm. And just one more point on that is the way Entangle was designed from the very beginning was so we're not here to step on huge monster toes like AVAX or Ethereum. We're actually here to blend in with this siloed ecosystem. So it was designed where we partner with protocols, DEXs, layer ones, layer twos, and it's more of a B2B solution where the liquidity layer, and then as a result of establishing these B2B connections, we then present a very user-friendly B2C solution. So that's the entire sort of thinking at foundational level behind the Entangle protocol.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know this isn't the layer one that's going to be the home of DeFi that's trying to steal liquidity from Avalanche or anything like that. This is meant to be the hub, right? This is meant to be that liquidity layer that facilitates all of these chains and brings it all together and allows liquidity to flow more freely between chains and allows DeFi to thrive, brings each chain closer together. It even allows in the future closer, synergies between protocols on separate chains. People are able to do token swaps from chain to chain eventually, utilizing Entangle. There's going to be a lot of stuff that this enables. This is DeFi framework that can change the future, and it's very exciting.
Absolutely. And just on that point, you made some very interesting points there. If anybody's aware of internet banking, like now there's new solutions, open banking solutions, open banking APIs, where you now get products from various different banks under the same platform. So it's basically the akin to a open banking solution for DeFi, but it's not just limited there. It's like with that open banking, you're also getting the ability to lend and borrow cross-chain. These synthetic LPs, you can transfer cross-chain, mint a stable coin on that chain. So there's some very, very interesting things. It's all about making liquidity more fluid and therefore increasing revenue opportunities and opening up the door for secondary and tertiary use cases.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's when this can really start to blow your mind if you start to look towards the future and what this enables. It's very, very groundbreaking, and it's very exciting. We got a couple more questions. I'm almost through, and from the community questions. So, does Entangle use any Oracle, and for what purpose is that Oracle used? So, Entangle does have an Oracle. It was developed in-house, and it is a custom-built Oracle. They won't be utilizing Chainlink or anything like that. So, I had a question to elaborate on this, though. Is there any concern with the Oracle being untested, or obviously it will be tested, but it hasn't been battle tested with high volume, put under attack or stress, stress test. Is there any concern with that, with potential flash loan attacks, things like that?
So what we've done is basically we've explored oracles for a very long time. When we designed our own, we took some inspiration from battle-tested oracles already. Number one. Number two, there's a validator solution which backs up the oracle. So it's not just relying on what the oracle is saying. The validators are then validating, and executing transactions. And that's number three. We are exploring the possibilities of a backup oracle from the likes of Chainlink. So the security around the oracle is been very well thought out. It will be tested significantly. We will put it through a lot of stress tests. It's backed up by the validation solution, and then there's the possibility of us deploying a second ear as such, just to make sure that the one ear is listening correctly.
Yeah, that's sufficient. That's a good answer. Thank you for that. So, a couple more questions, and then we are done with community questions. So, how does staking work? We kind of reviewed the validator delegator thing. I think I'll refer him to a Medium article. And also, we just covered revenue. And yes, we do buybacks and burning. Slava covered that as well. I don't want to repeat everything, so I'll direct him towards a Medium article. I think he joined late. But who can participate in the DAO? Is that strictly for validators, delegators, NFT holders? How is that going to work?
Those will be open to Entangle USD holders because that has DAO voting rights. Stakers, delegators, holders of the token, they delegate. So that's the primary way to operate in the DAO. At the moment, we are looking at other options. As I said, the DAO piece is the last, Lego piece. So we have like 70% of it defined. But we are going to be using traditional ways. But one of the innovative ways is the fact that the Entangle USD carries governance rights as well, although it's lower in proportion to the Entangle token itself. So and then you've had the delegation and the staking aspect. So through them mediums, you're able to partake in the DAO. However, we are looking at various other type of gamification mechanisms. If they're suitable, if we can implement them within reasonable time and cost, we will do. But I hope that answers the question sufficiently, Tulip.
100%. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. I think that's good for community questions. We have covered so much. Is there any closing statements you want to make? Anything you want to say to kind of wrap all this up? What's the best way for people to get involved? All of those things. If you could just give us a closing statement and what you'd like people to do to kind of help push Entangle forward.
I mean, the first thing is stay entangled. But the second thing is, I think one of the key things is that we're looking for is if there are any content writers, people who, already have, good presence on social media. It might be 500 followers, 1,000, etc. We're looking to do this organically, Tulips. I have, through my experience in the space, in terms of when we go launch, we have all of the exchanges. I myself am direct with the likes of Bybit and a few other exchanges. There's no issues on that side where we're going to get listed, what we're going to be doing, etc. We have a complete strategy set out. However, I think the game is changing in terms of crypto itself. And I truly believe that a strong organic community spreading the word, we have development side is completely stacked. We have everything we need. There's nothing required there. It's more on the community side. We want to see everybody retweeting, liking. If there's anyone who's a technical copywriter who wants to come and join the team, help us set out some documentation around validators, etc. We are opening our arms with love.
That's amazing, dude. You just cut out there at the end.
Hello.
There we are.
Yeah, sorry, we just ran out of internet connection because of VPN, but we're back now. So yeah, so as I said previously, the game has changed. We need a strong foundational community right at the root. Everybody is, contributing, reading the articles. If there's a technical copywriter who wants to join the team and help us deliver out documentation for for running a validator node, etc., our arms are open, the doors are open. More than happy to speak to anybody who's interested in helping us on that side. From a development perspective, we are completely stacked. We're confident in execution on the product side, and yeah, just have fun, create memes, spread the word, spread the love, and just know that we're a team who's constantly working around the clock. It's really a mission here to drive Entangle to the destination that it can get to. So, and thank you very, very much for being the first, members of an AMA and the first AMA that Entangle has done. Myself and Slava and the rest of the team are very appreciative, of your attendance, and we're really looking forward to having more of these sessions. And any other questions, etc., feel free to use the Discord, and we look forward to hearing from you.
And most
Awesome.
importantly, guys, stay entangled.
Yes, sir. Stay entangled. Hey, real quick, Faisal, I brought somebody up on stage who is uniquely positioned to help with the copywriting and the technical writing. So if the serious
Amazing.
Pumpkin here has much experience working with many different partners in DeFi, and she's done a lot of different stuff. Pumpkin, you want to show yourself real quick?
I've got stage fright now. This is like a public interview. But yeah, I do. My background is in copywriting. I'm working with an auditing firm, who they do a lot of auditing on Cosmos actually, and I've also been doing some writing with Fuse. So if you guys wanted to talk about copywriting and things like that, I would love to chat.
Amazing. It sounds like you're from the UK as well, which is, of course,
Yes.
close to home.
Pumpkin
But yeah,
Bob.
no, Pauline, Pumpkin, that is amazing. Thank you for taking your time out and jumping on the stage. So please get in touch and let's get the ball rolling. Sounds great.
I will do. Thank you guys, and thank you Tulip for bringing me up for my first.
So
Public.
awesome, thank you. Life Eternal had some questions. They're really technical. I want to make sure you ask them how you want to ask them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I heard at the start of the AMA that you guys have some traditional finance background. And, of course, a goal of crypto as a whole is to bring more of that money over, to have that capital to be able to use that and develop more, tools. Obviously, time is money and yada, yada. So what tools do you tend to bring from the traditional finance? Do you tend to put out like business report style things saying, hey, like, this is the capital we've taken in, this is how we plan to deploy it? And so that way, maybe, that market of traditional investors who may be seeking to come into DeFi may have a little bit something more, relevant to them, at the start of their knowledge.
No, thank you, Life Eternal. So yeah, so at the moment it's not been formalized into reporting processes, but I'll give you one example. So one of our early partners, they're called B2B brokers. They provide liquidity for CFD platforms to trade different forex options, CFDs, and also crypto CFDs. So what we said to them was, look, why don't we work together with your suite and network of liquidity providers, potentially create an account, or bring that liquidity to Entangle, and then we will build maybe potentially like a DYDX, or some type of decentralized exchange which allows speculation of different kind than just a traditional DEX. So those conversations are ongoing, and then of course what we would do then we would do a model to say, okay, if we brought in $20 million worth of liquidity, this would be the fees that are being charged. These are the revenue points, and the number of users, etc., equates to X amount of revenue. Are you interested? And I think it's actually it's good for them, not necessarily because of revenue as such, because there's so many unknowns, but also from a pure marketing perspective, because as you know now, many of these corporates are looking to venture into the Web3 space. So we're trying to position ourselves to say, if you're anything to do with traditional finance, speculation, CFDs, options, futures, etc., and you want to explore it in a decentralized way, then Entangle can offer that home and a launch pad for you to do so. So I hope that sort of gives you a flavor as to what's going on in the background.
So let me recap. And essentially, you're saying that's not the plan at this point, but as you guys get more of those onboarding, of course, they're going to want those style of reports from you, and you'd be comfortable in doing a more traditional finance, report back to them sort of deal.
Absolutely. And also we'll create
Wonderful.
a back-end dashboards, which read the data they need, and we have reporting expertise in house, etc. But at the moment, the priority is let's build the base chain, let's build these 3 dApps, let's get it audited, let's get it out, and let's see how it all goes. And then in parallel, let's have these discussions ready to onboard these types of partners.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
To add to that, I'm not sure if you heard me mention the Block Explorer. It's going to show pretty much all protocol revenue statistics. There's going to be a dashboard that has advanced analytics for all of that stuff. So, those potential TradFi investors are able to see the revenue structure and sustainability at a glance very easily. That'll be baked in. So John or JHN, did you have something that you wanted to ask? Thank you, Life Eternal, by the way.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Yes, you
welcome.
So, Entangle is the first cross-chain protocol utilizing synthetic derivatives to synergize liquidity. My question is, what you mentioned in your white paper about lots of blockchain network such as Solana, Binance, Ethereum. So what and Avax and etc. So what are your first priority of this on-chain network?
Thank you. Yeah, so to start with, we've already integrated Ethereum, AVAX, Phantom, Binance, and the first non-EVM chain was Elrond. So what we decided to do was first let's sort out the EVM aspect, because of course the non-EVM versus EVM is what everybody wants to achieve. And then we obviously worked in quite some detail around the non-EVM side, which we've very successfully done in our MVP. Next will be potentially layer 2s, Arbitrum, Optimism potentially. And then we have near lined up. We've got a partnership, I didn't mention, with Concordium blockchain as well. They're a new corporate blockchain, which we'll be integrating. We have, and a few others. We're going to start off with the big hitters. And then myself and Tulip will be going through some of the chains that are approaching Tulip or approaching us now. And then we will once we define the list, once it's certain, we're more than happy to publish that and to the community to give you guys an idea of what we'll be integrating first. But the first 5 are comfortably, those are guaranteed, and those are already been done on the MVP.
Great. Yeah, I think we have covered pretty much everything and then some. Let's wrap this up. Thank you guys for your time. We've already ran through closing statements and had people up here. I'm just going to do a little soundbite for the close. This has been our 27th Investors AMA here at the TulipDAO, where we now offer AMAs and KYCs, as well as Project Jumpstart services on any chain. If you have a project and you need help getting it launched, get in touch. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Let's go.